As speaker, as I always say, that normally I don't get a chance to speak, so bear with me. I'll try to make use of the time that I have. I essentially have 4 points, although they're fairly long points, but I'll start off with, I think, the last point, which is sort of what Suhaimi said about doing what is required. So having just turned 54, I ask all of you here, and all of you are very senior, not in age, but in your appointments, to think back when you first started at work, when you embarked on your life's journey, about what were the things you were passionate about. The world was your oyster, we were fearless, there were many, many things that we wanted to do, there were a lot of injustices we wanted to do right, there were a lot of things that we wanted to make a difference to the people around us, to change the world, right? Remember that, how it felt? How does it feel now that you are in this position of leadership? At whatever level of management, and many of you will be at that level of management. Have you been able to realize those visions that you have? To be able to translate all those passions into reality? Or have we become jaded? Have we become worldly wise or worldly unwise because got bottom line to meet? Or the usual, last time was CSR, then was ESG, and then got SDG, and then now got purpose. There'll be a new slogan every other day. I don't know what the next one will be, right? I mean, it's like, there we go again. Or you have comments like, it's well and good to do your SDG stuff, your ESG stuff, only when you're profitable. When you're back against the wall, your company going to tap up, it's not going to carry on very long. To hell with those things, right? And basically, survival at all costs. You remove people, this, that, and the other. And so there are harsh realities of life that we learn. And these things aren't necessarily bad. You do need systems, you need processes, and so on. But remember, deep down inside, I'm not overly fussed about what you call it. Purpose, is it new? I was, I work with Chin Siong, and I was quite surprised that, this corporate purpose, what's this thing that suddenly has crept into our lexicon in the last couple of years? But is it really new? If you think about it, we all want to be purpose-driven. You can call it whatever you want, that's fine. I think terms do matter, but sometimes they don't either. Maybe they sell books for people who write on it. But ultimately, I think if you ask all of ourselves, and remember where we started off, whatever age you are, we all want to be purposeful. We want to have a meaningful life. We want to be able to make a difference. We do not want to be some anonymous cog in the machinery. We all would like to feel that we are of value and that we matter, right? But there's also the other dimension which, as we go along, we become preoccupied with self. We want to do well for ourselves. We want to do good. We say it, but do we really walk the talk? We're interested in climbing the corporate ladder. We talk about the big altruistic stuff, but yet the way we treat our staff, the way we lead, the way we manage, we talk about leadership. And one of the things, I do a lot of work on leadership, and you ask many leaders, what's your leadership philosophy? We lead every day, but we can't actually describe. And perhaps the more important thing is, how do we live it out on a day-to-day basis? So purpose isn't new. I think it's about us trying to do good, trying to make a difference. And I think just hold that thought, because I'll come back to that. Secondly, I think I just want to touch a bit about, just share some stories, a couple of stories. It's something that I feel quite strongly about. So I'll start with one story. As an MP on the ground, this happened very early on as a member of parliament. This was 2013, I think 2012. So as we all have our Meet the People session, there was a family that we helped, a low-income family, a family of 4, and their youngest child, both were cleaners, so we were helping them with financial assistance and a range of other help. Their youngest child was a boy of 6, really cute kid, very lively. The next time I met him at the Meet the People session, when the parents brought him to see me, he was clearly in pain. He was 6 years old, he was wearing his diapers. His head was actually enlarged. Something was clearly fundamentally wrong. So clearly he had to go to hospital, so I got one of my volunteers, we drove him to KKH that night, and basically he had a massive, in fact he had 2 massive operations because he had a tumor growing in his head. In fact, he was growing blind. He was pressing his optic nerve in the past couple of months. But long and short of it, the boy died. Now my takeaway then was, why didn't someone pick it up? The school, the kindergarten, or wherever he was, a play school, neighbors, were there people who outreached to them that picked this issue up? I'm not sure whether with early intervention a difference could have been made. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. I know that they went to the hospital. The hospital suggested that the boy be warded for observation and to find out what was happening. But somehow last minute the parents thought that they couldn't afford it, and therefore they didn't. But the fact of the matter is that there were schemes and all that available. That should not be an issue. But what made it clear to me was that, can we prevent these things from happening in our community here in Singapore? And we know that these things happen. Recently, I think we had an old lady in Tampines who died along with her oldest son. They were on the radar screen of our Silver Generation ambassadors. We do, and I work with AIC, and I think what they assign to their Silver Generation ambassadors is perhaps one volunteer to about 4 families perhaps, visiting them maybe twice, once a fortnight, maybe once a month. But in that span of that couple of weeks to a month, this happened. Could we have prevented it? And these are things not happening in some third world country. In our own neighborhoods, these things happen. What can we do to go upstream? Second story is when I was organizing National Day in 2009, right? So the SAF organizes National Day every year. And to me, it's like, what new insights are you going to have? So, but as usual, I'm particular about purpose. And let's ask ourselves, what are we trying to do? So we had a huge, massive outreach that year, thinking we want to be charitable, we want to be inclusive, rather than get our soldiers to go into a room and then pack, or rather a huge room, to pack the fun packs for the next 2 weeks and get it all done very efficiently. We work with Silver Ribbon to work with those in IMH, mental health. We work with Cheshire Home. We went to prisons, which is very complicated. We got to take out all the sharp objects. We got to get the inmates who volunteer to pack. And we work with Make-A-Wish Foundation for those who are terminally ill, to bring them to watch a show and so on. Now, we were trying to be inclusive. We were trying to be charitable. Maybe because in 2009, if you remember, was a global financial crisis, and thought better do some good, right? In case people criticize about why you spend millions of dollars. Not that the fireworks cost millions of dollars, but why are you spending all this money when people are suffering and so on. But what I didn't quite realize, and while we knew it was important, was that in the process of wanting to be inclusive, to be charitable, actually I realized that there was a massive impact on our people. For example, when we went to a CC hospice, so we brought our military police there to do the rifle drills. We brought the artillery guys, the 21-gun salute, we brought a whole cannon there. Of course, we didn't fire the cannon, but we did that would just accelerate the process for some of them in the hospice. But what we realized was that performance that day was actually more important than on 9th August itself. Because for the children with leukemia who were at the hospice, we'll never see this again. All the elderly folks who are there, and also not so elderly folks who are there at the hospice, and you know why they're at the hospice, they will not see this again. When we worked with Yellow Ribbon, and many of the inmates shared, and I only realized this later, that for the first time in their lives, they felt that they were giving back to society. When you work with Make-A-Wish Foundation, you bring those who are terminally ill, it isn't just about giving the NDP ticket, because we have to arrange transport. And for your young servicemen to come in contact with the issues of mortality, serious disability, it has a huge impact on how they felt. And my big takeaway is that volunteering, giving back, while we wanted to be inclusive, doing CSR, whatever it is, the impact was as much on them as it is on us, as it is on them. It is a tool for change. This is how you change lives, not just the lives of the people you're reaching out to, but for the people who are actually doing that. As St. Francis says, it's in giving that you receive. So personally, so I volunteer, right? So I volunteer at CC Hospice. And I'll tell you that when you work with people who are terminally ill, you talk to them, what do you think they are talking about? Some of them, of course, because they're entrenched with their families are not there. But are they talking about, I used to be a CEO of this company, I used to be whatever, minister, I used to be, whatever that is that's seemingly important. That we seem to be very troubled by and chasing after all this wealth and whatever it is, things that we are griping about every day. But what do you think are the things that they are often talking about? The regrets in life that they have. I wish I'd spent more time with my children when they're growing up. I wish I'd spent more time with my parents when they're around, with my siblings, to repair relationships with people. It's always about people, right? It's always about others. And if you think back about my first issue, is actually if we dig down deep down inside and understand what is it that makes us human, it is the capacity to love, to have empathy, to have compassion. And what makes us relevant, it is that sense of others. And if you ask yourself, what other activities do we have to begin to move us from being self-centered to become a lot more other-centered? Because that's what it is, ultimately, isn't it? From a secular perspective. And I think giving, volunteering, is that change agent. There are very few activities that do that. How many of you, just out of curiosity, how many of you here regularly and actively volunteer? Just a show of hands. Some, right? But many of us talk about issues, but you realize that very few of us do. And for those of you who do, you do know that your lives are changed. For example, recently, 2 years ago, I think, PSLE question, right, the Helen and Ivan question, wow, so chim one. My children cannot, I see my friends so big take you, MOE, why like that? But when you talk to my kids in Chai Chi, the low income families, they are not struggling only with Helen and Ivan question. There are not 10 questions they are struggling with. But should we also lower the standards so they don't get freaked out, they don't get overly stressed? And of course, the response will be, no, cannot lower the standards. The moment it affects me and my family, it becomes an issue, right? But we forget that actually perhaps the response would be, I'm so fortunate that my child is only struggling with one question, unlike others. And you will be familiar with this because you see a WhatsApp chat group. There are a lot of these things going around of a range of multitude of issues. Because we forget how blessed we are. We forget to be thankful. We gripe, we complain. A lot of it, if you realize, we talk about inequality. Often it's not just about the poor because we don't spend the time helping them. It's about us. Our desires, our wants. Well, he got 2 GCB, I only got 1. Okay, I don't know, whatever that people might be preoccupied with, right? So I think really at the key of all this is how do we become a lot more other-centered as a society? Which leads me to my third point, really, and a point mentioned earlier about leadership. All of us here are leaders. As long as you're somewhere in the food chain, you've got people under you are leaders. So, okay. Now, what kind of leader are you? We are leading every day. What's your theory of success? What do we believe in? Every day, and we have been at the bottom of the food chain before, remember? Have you had bad leaders? Any of you have never had bad leaders before? I'm sure we all have had. Right? How disengaging it is, how unmotivating it is. We talk about all this external changing the world and all that. First, let's look inwards. How are we treating our people? How are we leading them? Progressive work practices. And why that's important? Because if you ask yourself, what is your theory of success? If I were to ask you, what is that theory of success? Ultimately, if this is that silver bullet, we get it right, frankly, whether in our company or country, things will get sorted out. For me, and there's no right or wrong answers, right? But at the end of it, to me, really, it is about people. Ultimately, people are we say that all the time, right? But what does it mean? Because ultimately, people need to sense-make what the issues are. People need to organize themselves. People need to work out the solutions. We will create the systems, processes, and so on. We have to deliver the solutions. But every organization has people, every country has people. Just because, so people, most important resource, doesn't automatically make it successful. But what is a key factor about people? If indeed it is a key to our success. Is it about people being skilled? Of course, it's important. Knowledgeable, able, processes. These are the hard capabilities that I think are necessary, and we can't drop the ball on that. And you talk about people are most important, and when you talk about developing your people, oftentimes it's about sending them for courses, postgrad, whatever it is. But what is key? I think it's whether are people going the extra mile for each other. I use the SAF as an analogy. For the military to be able to defend a country, you need good pilots, you need good aircraft, you need good systems, processes, procurement processes, technological development approaches, and so on and so forth. All those are important. That's the hardware part. But ultimately, for a military to be able to be successful in defending their country, what are we asking every serviceman and servicewoman to be prepared to do? To sacrifice their lives, if need to. Ideally, you make the other side sacrifice their lives first, okay? In that order. But that is what it is, right? And thankfully, that's probably the only job that I know of that actually requires people to do that. But can you buy that? Can you order that? Can you mandate? You can't. But what quality does it suggest? Again, it is about there's something more than just self. I'm prepared to sacrifice my life for a cause, for my family, for my buddies, for something I believe in. And in the same way, in our equivalent version, short of sacrificing our lives, is am I prepared to go the extra mile for my company, or what we believe in, what we stand for the leaders, my bosses, for my colleagues? And we all know that, right? We've been in teams where really you just want to get out of the job and move on to somewhere else. It's not very motivating and engaging. We just want to climb the corporate ladder, do well, hyper-competitive environment, and you know where that's going to go. And earlier, Panot and TC talked about it, and basically when you're short-term, you know where that's going to go. Yeah, you get extraordinary results for a short-term, but it ain't going to last. It's a spirit, it's a hardware. It's whether we have faith that that is indeed true. And I think deep down inside, we know that that is true. So it's how do you become, again, more other-centered? And in a society, it's the same. But the question is, what do you do? Because it's one thing to, as a rhetoric, sure, it's a motherhood statement, what does it mean? But if it is so darn important, then what can we do to make that difference? And this is where I think, and I think it's great to hear, I think what HP does, RGE does, Frasers, with how through the work that they do as a company, and how that impacts the environment, and how they want to transform lives and so on. So I think well and good. So I'm not going to go into that. But I think beyond that is actually what are we also mobilizing our people to do in our local community? So this is where the CSR or whatever you want to call it, right? The S part of the ESG, which we're all struggling. There's a lot of motherhood stuff going around. We're just saying and so on and so forth, and whether it's ESG washing or whatever washing. But but how do we actually utilize that as a change agent for real? And you are all at a stage now in a position of leadership to be able to make that difference. I cited those stories earlier because I think if we, and I've concluded, my own sense is that I think corporates really is one of the significant keys to which we can shift the needle on issues that we're confronting in society. As a loose volunteer, right? So I volunteer at CC. Recently haven't been as regular as I should. I volunteer Wednesday morning to do morning duties. So basically, preparing breakfast, happening to change diapers with the nurses and all that, because if you're not there, nurses got to do these things. But Wednesday morning, I probably need to change to another day. It's not a very good day because Tuesday night got Champions League football. You need to kind of stay up, which is fine if your team wins, but if it doesn't win, then it's like morale very low and very tired. And then when you don't go, and it so happens you could have actually one less volunteer or no volunteers in their ward that morning. But corporate could be different, right? And I was trying to pursue, I don't think MSF is here, but because MSF is nearby and ex-Minister of Social and Family Development, trying to persuade them, look, actually just down the road, a CC hospice is there. They really could do with volunteers at ward duties, especially in the morning. And we have a whole organization, you could commit, hey, I make sure every morning, every ward, I got 2 people. And if they cannot wake up, then they just make sure that they tie down with the HR, they will make sure that someone is there. When you are loose volunteer, not easy. Even you have a good established volunteer management system in the CC, it is not easy. My wife helps out with me in the area of work with the children's side. I will WhatsApp list of about 100 people, but you end up only 3, 4. And you know how it is? It's 3, 4 people that end up doing the job all the time. And it is not sustainable. And you're on the verge of giving up because it can be quite frustrating. But corporates. So my conclusion is that if we begin to actually say, you know what? Yes, with my corporate purpose, I'm doing all these things from my business perspective. But look, if we are involved in the community, can I actually make a difference? Because when you organize yourselves, I think there's a very, very different impact. So let me illustrate as an example. We all know that we are going to have an aging challenge, right? Because we're all going to live longer. Demographically, we have fewer children. And because we are plugged into the world, whatever few children we have, maybe overseas, maybe they're working abroad. And I'm assuming that all of them are failure. Maybe they're not, right? And isolation will set in. We are all very plugged in. But as you all know, at some stage, illness, ailments, whatever it is, mobility, isolation can set in. And isolation isn't just about low income. You stay in landed property, you know, you barely see your neighbors. It happens too. But what if instead of right now, my silver generation ambassadors are basically 1:4, what if you say, let's say a company, let's say Frasers, right? Let's not to arrow, but just examples since you're there. What if you say, you know, whatever number of staff I have, what if I say, look, let's form teams of 5, 6, and what we will do is you let us know, because the data is there, which are the elderly folks that could do a visit once a week. It'd be nice, right? And we basically identify where are the families that are within 500-meter radius of where your company is. Basically lower whatever barriers to entry there can be. And then basically, look, your philosophy in the company, and that's what we try and do, the share program for ComChest is an opt-out option. That means rather than who wants to volunteer, it's like, sorry, our company believes in this, everyone will volunteer. But I give you a choice, you can opt out. You know how it works, it'll be stickier that way, right? So what to do, you know, since everyone seems to be volunteering, so I got to do it. But if it's for a good cause, if you do it meaningfully, I suspect some of them will say, hey boss, actually I'm doing once a week, once a month, but could I do it more frequently? That should be your desired outcome. There is something that's changed. And because you organize it this way, and maybe at lunchtime, every Friday, that's what we do. We just all disappear and go off, and we have lunch with the elderly uncle, auntie, who is just within 500 meters to a kilometer from where our office is. I'm not even asking you to volunteer out of office hours. Weave it in. And that's what we do as a company. One of the causes we support. Possible? Is it possible for us to be one of the only, and possibly the only country in the world that could do this? Where actually this is the best place to grow old, because you will never. And when you are able to visit every week, psychologically, emotionally, their well-being is very different. You get to know them, they're comfortable with you, you can begin to bring them out. They're confident, they're comfortable. You begin to pick up ailments a lot earlier, right? So you can't talk about healthcare costs. Well, we can deal with healthcare costs. Healthier SG is healthier SG at work too. But it only happens if we are organized. See, one of the paradigm we need to shift is, we let people choose what they want. I understand. But when we let everyone choose what they want, which is fine, and we have pockets of really good practices out there, but because they're pockets, they don't shift the needle. So aging is, for example, befriending is something that I could imagine many companies could do. And what is the burden on the individual? Actually, perhaps once a month. Because there are 4 or 5 of us, sometimes 2 of us visit, sometimes 3, sometimes 1. But because I share the load, the burden isn't so heavy. I could actually make it bearable. All it needs is just some organization. Inequality is another issue. Because what has happened over the years is not a function of failure, but because we have uplifted so many of us into the middle class and beyond, we can flashcards our children to death. When they reach primary 1, they can all singing and dancing. But for the kids who are disadvantaged, they may not have. And that gap is significant, which is why early childhood intervention becomes really important. Could we run reading programs? My challenge running reading programs is, Monday, it'd be good if we can have, but don't know whether got volunteers or not. I could imagine, I don't know, hypothetically erring. So HP, okay, Monday easy, no problem. You need how many people to run your RC center to manage? 5 people. Okay, I got teams of 20, 30 who are prepared to be trained. We rotate, on Monday, every Monday we'll be there. Possible? And you're there maybe just really babysitting them, playing with them, reading. Those who want to do a bit more, we can train, we can practice. And then another company can secure Tuesday, another one Wednesday. Not inconceivable. I distribute fruits and vegetables every week. I work with Fridge Restock Community, and I know that at Pasir Panjang, not every day there are enough volunteers to collect the fruits and vegetables. So this is about food wastage, but at the same time, it is also providing fresh produce for low income. It is also providing fresh produce for actually people who might be strained in their cost of living issues. But do we have people collecting? I could imagine a large company say, you know what, you need 15 people. Okay, every Tuesday we will do it. I got a team of about 80 of us. We rotate, you just do once a month, and we're there, we know what needs to be done. We go around collecting all this stuff. This is where you can begin to shift the needle on all the various issues in society, if we are more data-driven. And that's where, and my conclusion is that actually government can't do all this. I think you lose something in the process if you pay professionals to do it. I think you lose something if you just structure it, government will do. I think we lose something because we lose that opportunity to change. My message to the social sector is that we're not just there to help the blind, the poor, the disabled, the disadvantaged. We are there to facilitate and allow the rest of society to journey along with us so that we can change society. And as we begin to, my point about the child earlier is that as more volunteers come on board, I can go upstream. What I'm interested in and what we should be interested in is preventive work. Not to repair the cracks when it happened or to repair something when it's broken, but to prevent something from happening in the first place means you got to go upstream. You will never have enough social workers to do that. You will never have enough health workers to do that. But these are low-hanging fruits that, frankly, any one of us could do some of these. Basic befriending, spending time, working with kids, especially primary school kids, very teacher, and they talk a lot. But you pick up a lot of issues happening at home, abuse cases, neglect cases, before it happens. And then you tag team and queue in the social workers to come in when the heavy lifting work needs to be done. And this is where I would suggest the vision is, can we build a fundamentally different society? And the thing is that it is something well within, does this fit into the corporate purpose idea? That yes, there are different things that we're doing as a business. Some areas of business lend itself that way better than others. But one of the things that I know that some people at SGX keep on holding me, what's your CSR you're doing? Well, can we do it meaningfully? Can we actually organize ourselves? Let's work together, and rather than just reinvent the wheel, think of new project, the once-a-year thing, could we break it down into bite-sized chunks on a regular basis? Mobilize and say that, you know, our company, these are the few causes we believe in, these are the things that we do, your choose, everyone will be involved. But you really feel strongly about it, you can opt out. You will know that the numbers will be a lot more than before. And frankly, and your objective isn't just doing that job. Your objective is that everyone then come back and say that, can I do more? Can I bring my family along? Because I think there's something different there. Can you imagine a society where more people begin to experience that change? What kind of society do you think we'll be living in? The toxic, negative stuff that we see in social media, and you know, we all participate there every now and then. Of course, I participate there quietly maybe, right? But you know where society is going to go. And it is not just a feel-good thing. Because the moment we're just focused on self, we just focus on today, whoever is the government of the day will have to pander to whatever we want here and now. And it will be short-term. We don't care about the long-term. We don't care about the greater good. We don't care about the trade-offs. All of you are leaders here. You know that it is about doing what is right and not what is popular. But guess what? The political pressure is very real. The only reason why you're able to make difficult long-term decisions is perhaps you do think that, okay, a bit, we song why tax increase, but okay, for the greater good, for the longer term, for sustainability, maybe, let's suck it up, deal with it. But if I don't really care, and the political game is played out as such, in any country you see that, it becomes short-term, right? So to me, it's actually a survival issue too. It's not just a nice to feel good about love, empathy, compassion. But that's where I would like to suggest to all of you, as you listen to all the various speakers here and companies who have been enlightened, who have been trying to do good, I think we can go further. And I think we need to stop at this rhetoric and tick the box. Because you are all here and now in a position of influence. Don't need to talk about changing the world, Singapore, government, stop. Let's take ownership and say, look, on my watch, within my company, within my family, this is what I can do. And what we are here to facilitate with NVPC, so I'm advisor to NVPC, advisor to NCSS, co-chair SGCAS with the other ministers, is really how do we try to broker that? How do we facilitate? So we will have teams that will help for those who are keen. So please let us know, right? See, when you talk to everybody, you really talk to nobody, right? But so we are also targeting friends, people we know, who we think, I think the heart is in the right place, and who not just heart in the right place, actually want to do something, but not sure where, not sure how. Let's begin to that's where the rubber hits the road. And weave it into our DNA, because I think there's a business proposition for it. Because if we, as some of you shared, if our staff begins to feel, wow, actually we are really making a difference, how collectively as a result of the reading program, myself and my deputy director spending every other week with this kid and finally cleared the PSLE, got to school, secondary school. It's a wonderful feeling and an experience that I don't think any cohesion activities will be able to replicate. Because deep down inside, like I said, I think all of us want to be that purpose-driven individual. And through the work that I do, even not directly, but through the outreach activities that we do, we are making the difference. So I think it will enhance your cohesion in the team too. So I do ask all of you to consider that this corporate purpose, or whatever iteration and whatever, I don't know what future version it will be called, but I think deep down inside we know what it means. But we are now in a position, all of us here in this room, senior enough to begin to shift the needle. Yes, I may not be able to shift that big needle, but imagine every one of you here in the companies that you lead, the tens or hundreds or thousands, and if many of them begin to experience what it means to give back, to genuinely care about others, and to begin to be grateful for what we have, and to want to do more and make a difference, do we not think that society will begin to change? And ultimately, if we look back where we first started, we do want to build a better society. And we want to live a legacy, a society where our children can grow up in. Are there partners who we can work with to help broker this process? So I see Namsoon there, right? I'm going to talk to you. So whether like EY or consultancies, I mean, you have folks who are doing project management. It's a wonderful way to network, wonderful way to learn what it means to translate that S into reality, as in the sustainability part, into the people dimension, help to broker how actually you can transform this space. And it's not just the giving. So on our side, we're also working with the receiving end, because the receiving end needs to sort itself out. The social sector needs to re-engineer work processes so that they can take you on board. In the community where I am as an MP, trying to work the pieces in the community is how do we then operationalize some of these things so that people can also help out in the community to prevent the issues from happening in the first place. But I think this is a here and now. We have all this future, Forward SG together. Well, the truth is, I think it is not just the government can't do this alone. And frankly, we can do this without the government too. Okay, we need the government maybe for information, not get in the way, maybe tax incentives or whatever it is. But the truth is, we can own this space. All of us here. And I ask the government agencies too. Right? I've been telling them and hounding them, I need the government ministries and agencies to volunteer too. They are doing the public policy work, but I need the officers to also spend time. Because I think the direct impact on them is also very different. Can you imagine any other society on earth who is able to do this in a deliberate way, in an extensive way, where we can be driven by data to understand what the social issues are and actually begin to shift the needle? Corporates will shift the needle. If we come on board, if we mobilize our people, and for those of you who are keen, try. Don't need to move your entire slice, move a sliver. See what the experience is, how to make it work. And if it does, then let's move and let's inspire other companies who may not be sure, but then come on board in the second phase, third phase. And before you know it, perhaps society begins to be different. So corporate purpose isn't just a rhetoric, isn't just a slogan, another new box that we need to tick. But I do believe that it's something that all of us can actually begin to do something about. It's completely within our abilities to do so. And I think we can build a different society. And ultimately, isn't that what we want? To live in a Singapore that actually we own, we shape. It's not about government. Everything is like government. That's a problem sometimes. But it's not about copying out and say, oh, see, government trying to devolve their responsibility. Because the government can't do this. Not possible. We all have to do it. And if you deconstruct it, it is not far-fetched. It is eminently doable. The burden is not as huge as you think. But we need the leaders to believe that, you know what, let's give it a shot. Let's try. Let's see how far we can go. And we will journey with you, NVPC, NCSS, the SGCAS team, and whoever we can mobilize, let's try to facilitate this, and let's see where it goes. So, but thank you very much. I know it's, for those online as well, I mean, it's a long day to put in time to do this, but I hope that you have found value. I think for many of those who have shared in the panels, I mean, it's really inspiring to know that companies are walking the talk. It is doable. It can help your bottom line. But I think what is before us is something potentially even bigger. I think it is a possibility for us to build a society like no other. I mean, I might be exaggerating it, but if you really think about it, I'm not sure many other societies will be able to organize themselves to do this. Perhaps we can. We may fall short, but I think in the process, I think we will have achieved something quite magical. So with that, thank you very much.